Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Janet Leningham, and I have the pleasure of serving as Dean of the Frank G. Zarb School of Business. And we're really excited to have all of you listening in today on our panel discussion on the business of biotechnology. Our panelists each bring a unique skill and expertise to our discussion, having spent years in the biotech space. From scientific innovation to the financing to the legal issues, our panelists will help us all better understand the business of biotechnology. Our moderator today is one of Zarb's expert faculty members from the Information Systems and Business Analytics Department, Dr. Amir Gandami. Dr. Gandami teaches courses including data science, business analytics, and text mining. Through his research, he uses machine learning to develop innovative solutions for physicians to better diagnose and treat patients. A member of Northwell Health Statistics and Data Analytics Group, Dr. Gandami uses machine learning expertise to develop algorithms to better understand COVID-19 and positively impact health outcomes for patients. He has been awarded over $270,000 in research grants and scholarships and is the recipient of numerous research awards, including Hofstra's own, very prestigious, Lawrence A. Stetson Prize. Dr. Gandami received his BS and MS from Iran University of Science and Technology and his PhD from Ryerson. Unfortunately, Dr. Gandami can't join us with his camera because he's calling in from Canada. Apparently we have some issues, but he is on the phone and ready to conduct a great discussion. Amir, all yours.
Thank you, Dean Lenehan, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to serve as the moderator for this great panel. I apologize, there's some issues getting connected to Zoom, so I'm talking over the phone. We have an esteemed team of experts in different areas of biotech, and we've got a scientist, a lawyer, a CFO, so we are ready to roll. In terms of the format, I will start with a brief introduction to our panelists. We will then go over a few questions I've prepared for today's discussion. They cover a range of different topics in biotech, including definition, application areas, career paths, especially for business students, building a startup in this space, relevant legal and ethical issues, and career advice at the end for our students. We will spend the last 15 minutes of discussion to answer the audience questions. You will have two options to ask questions. One is to send them via the chat box. Ariella will kindly keep track of the questions and send them to me at the end. I won't be able to see the chat box, so she will kindly send me via email. Also, you have the option to use the raise hand button during Q&A and ask the questions directly. Let's start the introduction of our panelists, starting with Allan Cohen. Ariella, I'm assuming you have kindly shared the slide. He's an attorney with law firm Nixon Peabody and is the officing managing partner for Long Island. Allan represents a variety of companies ranging from large public entities engaging in mergers and acquisitions and mid-sized and family-owned businesses to technology-based startups organizing new business ventures and raising capital. He focuses on maintaining a general business law practice, adept at handling his clients' varied business needs, and providing the type of outside counsel that business would expect from an in-house general counsel. Allan's clients view him as the quarterback, ensuring that not only their business law, but also their employment, litigation, intellectual property, regulatory, and other legal needs are met. In terms of the background, he's earned a BA in economics from Binghamton University, started pre-law at LSE, and went to Columbia Law School to obtain a JD. Thank you, Allan, for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your valuable insight on different aspects of biotech, especially starting new ventures in this field. Thank you. Moving on to our next panel member, Dominic Pacitale, joins us from the Golden State, beautiful San Diego. Not sure, I just overheard that you're not in San Diego currently, Dominic, but wherever you are, we are glad to have you here. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And I should say, Dominic, welcome home. We are very proud to call him a Zarb alum. He's earned a bachelor's degree in accounting and an MBA in accounting and finance from Zarb. If you don't mind sharing, Dominic, when was it? What year did you get the degree?
Yeah, so I attended Hofstra University in 92 to 96. I graduated in 96, and then I went back for my MBA at night while I was working at OSI Pharmaceuticals. Very good.
I'm not sure if any of the professors are in the audience, but I'm sure they will be very proud of your achievements. Dominic is the CFO at ORIC Pharmaceuticals and also serves on the board of directors of Gilead Oncology, which is a biotech company focused on discovery and development of therapies for cancer. Dominic has 20 years of industry experience, including debt and equity financing, in-licensing transactions, acquisitions, marketing partnerships, and commercial product launches. Prior to joining ORIC, Dominic was the CFO of Anaptys Bio, which is a NASDAQ-listed biotech company, where he helped raise over $500 million in IPO and follow-up financing. Prior to that, Dominic was the Vice President of Finance, Strategy, and Investor Relations at Mediations and played a key role in its acquisition by Pfizer. He also served as the Senior Director of Collaboration and Operations Finance at Astellas Pharma and the Vice President in Treasury and Management Finance at OSI Pharmaceuticals. Dominic began his career with KPMG and is a certified public accounting. Again, thank you for joining us, Dominic. Dr. Premsrirut, welcome to the panel. We are delighted to have you here. Prem is a founder and has served as president and CEO of Mirimus since 2010. Among other achievements in 2016, Mirimus became the North American partner for model creation services in Charles River Laboratories, which is the global contract research organization providing nearly 1 of every 2 animals used in research worldwide. Additionally, as a response to COVID-19, Mirimus opened its clinical lab where they perform saliva pool testing, which is an innovative, high-volume COVID-19 PCR testing method. She's also an assistant research professor of SUNY Downstate Medical School. Prem serves as a board member of NY Bio, which is a life science trade organization connecting scientists, pharma, and biotech companies to local and state representatives. Furthermore, she's a board member of Biolabs, which is a nonprofit joint venture between the Economic Development Center of New York City and SUNY Downstate Medical Center. Prem is a pioneer in RNAi therapeutic design and CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology implementation for preclinical studies. She is a recipient of more than $4 million in small business innovation research grants from different bodies, including NIH, ORIC, and NCI, the National Cancer Institute. Prem was an MD, PhD medical scientist fellow at SUNY, Stony Brook School of Medicine, and Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, where she received extensive training in the fields of medicine, trauma surgery, cancer genetics, and molecular biology. She holds a BA in molecular cell biology and biochemistry from UC Berkeley, MD from Stony Brook, and PhD in genetics from Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. Under the leadership of Prem, Mirimus was recently, I think around 2 weeks ago, awarded a $1 million prize as a winner of X Prize Rapid COVID Testing Competition, one of the 5 recipients of the prize. Congratulations on this great achievement, and welcome to the panel, Prem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending. I would like to start with biotechnology in general. We have attendees from different backgrounds, and to make sure we are all on the same page, I would like to ask, what is biotechnology? What are the main application areas, main branches of biotech, specifically in healthcare, and the difference between biotech and pharma in general? Starting with Prem, please.
Sure. So I think it's a very broad question there and can be answered in many different ways depending how you look at it. And I think so many people would define a biotech or a biotech company differently. But biotech in general is when you take a biological process and utilize it to develop a commercial product or service or something, that's going to help humankind. You're out there trying to market what you do by using biological processes. So if it's biotech and healthcare, again, it's health driven solutions that you're trying to create using biology. If you're trying to distinguish between biotechs and pharma are typically more thought about sort of the end stage, right? Taking that what has been developed using biotechnology, and then bringing it to the general public as a therapeutic or medicine or device or anything of that nature. So that is what I would consider, in broad terms, the definition of biotech. But I think, again, it really depends who you ask. So maybe Allan or Dominic, you want to chime in there?
Sure, I'll jump in. Yeah, I think Prem is absolutely right. The definition is pretty broad, and it depends on who you ask. I think if you're going to dump it into a couple buckets, I think there's the traditional, the way I think about it, is the therapeutic aspect of it, of trying to help cure diseases, or what it may be, and that could be antibodies, antibiotics, and things like that. There's the traditional agricultural aspect of biotech. And then maybe the environmental aspect of biotech as well. And some people also categorize it as industrial. When you think about the differential between biotech and pharma, I think those lines have blurred over the years. I think traditionally, people would think of pharma as more of a small molecule approach to drug discovery and development. And the biotech, working with larger antibodies, was more innovative when you think of the Genentechs of the world and how they got there. But now that line is very blurred. I think there's a lot of pharma companies that are in small molecules, large molecules, CAR-Ts, and other modalities as well. So it's kind of blurred the lines. I like, working at a small biotech, we like to think we're much more nimble, we're much more less bureaucratic than the larger pharmaceutical companies. And hopefully that results in, quicker discoveries and development of drugs. But I think Prem is right. I think when you think of larger development studies and larger commercial opportunities, that's when, large pharma either comes in and buys smaller companies because they like what they see, or they find ways to partner with them as well.
Very good. Allan, do you have anything to add?
I would just add that pharma companies you might consider oversimplistically as more consumer facing. So you'll have somebody like Johnson & Johnson, everybody knows Johnson & Johnson products. They also do core biotechnology, and they like to incubate, invest in smaller emerging biotechnology companies. But a lot of the big biotech companies, you're not seeing them in ads for products on television or Netflix or whatever you're watching. So that, I think there is a bit of a line there too.
Very good. In line with that question, let's say I'll be doing research using genome big data for example, data discovery. So mainly on the data analytics side rather than the biology. Would you consider that a biotech related research?
Well, I guess you'd have to ask the question, is the data coming from studying, biological processes? And if so, then, you would really consider it a biotech, because a lot of that data, you're having to perform some kind of, experiment or assay or study human systems, or actually any living systems. And if that's the case, you could consider it kind of very closely in line with it.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Well, moving on to the second question, I would like to know how you describe the landscape of medical biotech, the biotech in healthcare specifically. What are the types of companies that we have in this space? Hubs of biotech in the U.S., major players in New York, and also in U.S. in general, ventures, small businesses. Allan, if you could, we would start with you. That would be great.
Sure. Thank you. Another very broad question that can be answered in many different ways. Look, there are big players, big biotech companies like Gilead, Amgen, Celgene, Biogen up in Boston, Regeneron, which is in I think Tarrytown, so that's close by. I know a lot of people there, and that's sort of one end of the spectrum, the big public company players. On the other end, they're just a host of emerging companies, or sometimes called startups, that are really just have a tremendous spike in activity. The sources of funding have been available to them like never before through a combination of larger company interest in incubating these smaller companies and willingness to make investments and provide guidance, to state programs, to institutions like Hofstra, which is getting off the ground and looking at parochially. Stony Brook, Cold Spring Harbor Labs have done great jobs at commercializing things that might otherwise be laying fallow as pure research projects, and allowing startups through either entrepreneur in residence programs or otherwise to help develop those into nice private companies. The other way you might want to describe it is these companies do different things. Some are focused on therapeutics, which is something that Dominic had mentioned. Some are, as you know, into vaccine. Some are into testing. And look what Prem has done recently has been phenomenal. Others are into prevention, right? So and other things too. There's a wide range of different sort of sub-industries that a medical biotechnology company can go into. And I think I'd end with saying there are also a lot of sources of support for these companies that I think are worthy of noting. Johnson & Johnson and J Labs are all over the country incubating these biotechnology companies, giving them a place to work collaboratively with other biotech companies, which is the emphasis on a culture and a community is very valuable. Biolabs is another organization that has these labs all over the country. And this is a tremendous change in the way biotechnology companies have been treated in the past. And it is so immensely valuable to these emerging companies that you're seeing them actually not take the 15, 20 years that used to take for these small companies to really develop something, but their progress is being accelerated.
Thank you. Thank you, Allan. Prem and Dominic, do you have any other comments to add?
Yeah, just to add on maybe to some of Allan's points, which I agree with every one of them. I think you can cut biotech a lot of different ways. You can cut it by therapeutic area, right? There's a lot of, there's oncology, there's NASH, there's cardio. So there's a lot of different ways people look at where the area of focus is for these companies. It's a stage of development, whether it's preclinical, clinical, or it's commercial stage. And then there's the more financial cut of the data where people look at it based on market cap. So the small caps where people typically say it's less than $1 billion. The mid-sized companies where it's somewhere in the 1 to 10 billion, and then there's the large cap which are over 10 billion. And I know Allan mentioned some in New York, such as Regeneron, who's been a very, very successful company as well. And then there's others areas of expertise, whether it's their platform or their MOA, whether it's a large molecule company or a small molecule company. So all these companies really try to differentiate themselves. And that's obviously necessary in order to get funding to kind of continue the endeavor, because as everyone knows in biotech, it's a capital intense business and does require lots of investments for a number of years before we get to commercialization. So I think that's definitely a distinct thing about companies like in the biotech space that is different than a traditional, a widget company of sorts.
Very good. Thank you. I'll move on to the third question. As reflected in the makeup of this panel, there are different paths leading up to biotech. We will discuss biotech entrepreneurship in the following questions. For now, I would like to focus on this career path. What are different ways, especially for business students, to get to a career in biotech? Starting with Dominic, please.
Yeah, so I think biotech has a lot of different potential ways to get into the space, right? There's, and maybe I'll give you just a quick background on my path into biotech. And to be honest with you, I didn't, I wasn't in high school or college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went, as I mentioned before, I went to Hofstra, got my accounting degree. Upon graduating, I worked at KPMG for about 4 years. And it was at KPMG I got exposed to certain biotech and certain pharma companies. One in particular, OSI Pharmaceuticals, which was a spin out of Cold Spring Harbor. And they were an oncology company. And long story, they got some rights back to a drug called Tarceva, which is an EGFR inhibitor. And we were able to develop it and commercialize it for non-small cell lung cancer. And, I like to say I got bit by the biotech bug. I just thought it was a fascinating business. It's a business where you can, do well financially. It's a good job. It's a rewarding job, and you're able to help people who are obviously in need, like people with cancer. So I feel fortunate that I was able to kind of fall into the position. And then back in 2010, the company was actually acquired by a company called Astellas, which is a Japanese company. So we sold the company for $4 billion. And to be honest with you, I had no intentions of leaving Long Island. Unfortunately, Long Island is not a hub right now for biotech. I know there's been a number of initiatives and there's been some traction there. So I'm hoping that continues over the years. But I did move to Chicago. I worked at the company that acquired us for about 18 months. And then I was approached by a company in San Francisco. I joined them in 2012, was there for about 4 years until that company, because we were able to develop a successful prostate cancer drug, we were acquired for $14 billion in 2016. And then as my bio said, I joined Anaptys Bio in 2017. And then I joined ORIC, which at the time was a private company in 2019. And I've been here for about a year and a half. And to be honest with you, I kind of fell into the biotech world and didn't know about it in college. So I do encourage people to do the research. I think there's a lot of different entries into biotech space, whether it's working operationally, joining a company, operationally like I did at OSI Pharmaceuticals. A lot of people get into it working on the banking side. They work for JP Morgan, a Jefferies, a Cohen, a Leerink, and they become either an investment banker and they get exposed to the biotech space, or people join it in the sense of the sell side. They become analysts, research analysts, and they write reports and they learn the business as well. So there's a lot of different ways to get into it from a financial standpoint. But I also think, obviously, on the medical side, the research side, the science side, depending on what your career aspirations are, and Prem could probably speak to this a lot better than I can, and with everything she's been able to accomplish on the science side. And then even on the IT marketing, I mean, there's again, this is a huge business. If you look at the industry, as you can see in this year in particular, 2020 and 2021, there's been some huge innovation. The number of IPOs that occurred in the biotech space in 2020, I think was double what they saw on average in the last 3 years or so. And this year, again, it continues to go well. So there's a lot of money in this industry in the sense of there's people who want to put money to work. People believe in innovation. And obviously, if you're successful, there's good IR for the investors that participate in some of these earlier stage companies. And I know we have Leo from Topspin on the call as well, who was actually an early investor in ORIC Pharmaceutical. He invested in the Series B, and he was key to us, in Series C and Series D, and having a successful IPO in early April. So we actually launched our IPO in April. I'm sorry, we filed our S1 confidentially in February with aspirations of going public in March, and then the pandemic hit with COVID. So we were on hold and we were trying to figure out what to do. And we actually launched, and we were the second company to actually launch an IPO during the pandemic. And we had a very successful IPO. We had the deal upsized 2 times. The deal was oversubscribed and the stock traded well in the aftermarket. And the only way we can do that if you have dedicated investors like Topspin and others that are in our story that are really dedicated to the long-term aspects and strategy of what we're looking to do here. Because as I said before, this is not a 1 or 2 year stint. This does take years to really evaluate and invest and develop the biology, the chemistry around it, and invest in the drugs to get it to market. So you really want to attract long-term investors. So there's a lot of different ways we could talk about a little bit later as well, but I want to give Prem and Allan a chance to speak in here as well.
Well, I can say that not being a business student in the past, that one thing they don't teach you in medical school and getting your PhD is business. So there's a lot of opportunity for you guys with that education to come into this industry, because Lord knows, everybody knows scientists, physicians, they all need help in this area. And a lot of them get really, they become experts in such a narrow part, and the way they speak to other scientists, is always science. And a lot of the scientists have a difficult time, giving that pitch, giving that, very simplified, how do you face the general public with your idea, your deep science knowledge, but translate it into a few words that everybody can understand and comprehend. And, and that's one thing that it's not taught very easily. It's a difficult thing to do. So I think there's so many ways for business students to get involved and to take this career path. If you have some basic knowledge, or you can understand the lingo, but you are capable of delivering the message. And I think that's, delivering the message and also helping the industry to recognize, where there's value. Sometimes it's really hard. Everyone in science always thinks, wow, this is the best innovation, the best this. And, I've often had to, when I'm evaluating, say, well, I'm really glad you can perform it once or twice in your lab. Can you do this and hand this off to someone that just graduated high school or something, and have them do it 1,000 times repeatedly and come up with the same result? Because, unless it's got a scalability or some kind of application, it's really hard to take that out of a laboratory and really, apply it out in the real world. So that's, that's the part I think that is missing a lot in PhD education or, medicine, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of things. One, a shout out to the patent lawyers. If you want to go to law school and you still want to be involved in biotechnology, patent lawyers are not just broadly based patent lawyers. Biotechnology patent lawyers have to have a very strong understanding of the science in order to be good at what they do. So yes, you can still go to law school and be involved in biotechnology, become a general counsel one day. The other thing I'll mention is a lot of emerging companies come to me, it's an individual, one or two, sometimes three, and they have a license to some technology, they want to develop business. It's very important to build teams. And building teams means having people with complementary skills. If it's 3 scientists, that may be great, but you're missing other pieces to the puzzle. And if biotechnology is a subject matter that's of interest to you, then whatever it is that you do, whether it's business, finance, management, HR, if you can master the subject matter, there's biotech, there's a place in biotechnology for you.
Very good, very good. Thank you for your comments. I personally, just like Dominic, got involved in healthcare research by mere accident. I just joined Hofstra and got to meet an entrepreneur from China at the time. A relative of mine was diagnosed with cancer, and then we started talking, and the whole research started. One thing I would like to share with the students who are in this meeting is how fascinating it is to work in this space. My research background is policy optimization, either mathematical modeling or data-driven optimization. And I've used that in different areas, including marketing and transportation. We would form an objective function, make some assumptions, build a mathematical model, and try to optimize that objective function. For example, minimize the total cost or maximize profits. Now, in healthcare, what we do is the same thing. I mean, what I'm involved in is the same thing. The research is to maximize, for example, the survival rate or optimize the patient outcomes. So that objective function is not a dollar value anymore. It's just people's lives. And I think if one patient's life is they would have a better outcome as a result of my research is worth more than 1 million hours spent. And that's what is very, very fascinating, as I mentioned, about research and career in healthcare. Now let's shift gears a little bit talk about startups in this space. What are the different types of biotech startups? What are the main steps in building one? Prem, you have extensive experience in this area. I would start with you, please.
Sure. I think we covered, what are the different types of biotech startups.
Yeah.
And, everyone's journey is so unique in this. So I think, the only thing I can describe really is my journey and how this happened. And, it was really, as many things are in life, serendipitous. The one thing about biotechnology, though, in general, is that your idea doesn't just fall from the sky, independent of a lot of things ahead of you. It's always, along the journey, you're adding or learning or building upon, prior research, prior findings, something else. And so, with that, you have to realize that you're not in a box. And, so oftentimes the first step to starting a biotech really is, your, and maybe Allan would go into this later, but, your freedom to operate, right? What are the existing technologies out there? And do I really have a genuinely good idea that's commercializable? That's always the first question to really ask when you do a startup. Is it, again, as I said before, there's so many people that come, with ideas, but they can't take that out of the lab because it's just not scalable. If you need a PhD trained person at every step of the pipeline to get to the end, and there's no room for scalability, you're never going to be able to bring it to a price point that, someone's going to pay for this service or this technology or this, whatever it is that you're creating. So that's really the first thing to ask yourself is, what am I doing what is it enabling, right? And, so when you think about different types of biotechs, my company in particular is what we'd consider a platform biotechnology company. What it means is we have a specific technology such as RNA interference or genetic engineering that can be applied very broadly to many different applications, to many different disease areas, to many different, and the one thing that can kill a company is following too many of those. So oftentimes you really have to pick and choose. Okay, I have this idea, it works great, and what am I going to actually go after? What is going to be maybe the lowest hanging fruit, or what is going to have the biggest market? What is going to be, again, that's the first question you need to ask. With our company, what we did instead was, we didn't have a specific area. We didn't have that. We decided to first, just to generate capital or revenues very quickly, was to say, okay, we have this ability to tackle and help other companies in their research in any area. So we can offer a service around our technology that will allow us to then generate revenues quickly, while we then learn more and how to utilize our technology, maybe where is the best focus disease area that we want to go after. So with RNAi, if none of you know what this technology is, it's the ability, using our own, machinery, immune machinery within our bodies, to turn genes off, right? And because we're not actually turning or, affecting the DNA itself, it's reversible. So you can effectively turn a gene off and turn it on in much a way that a drug would inhibit a protein or, some kind of enzyme. And so we can utilize this as a tool for research, but you can see broadly how it could also be turned into a therapeutic. So that's where, we as a company started off, well, let's use this as a tool first to better understand and grasp, how best to then deliver it. Because that's the problem that we still, haven't necessarily solved. It's a great technology, but the delivery aspect of it as a therapeutic has always been the biggest challenge to RNAi as a therapeutic. So, in terms of building the company, I think those are the really first questions anyone has to ask, and they don't always ask that to themselves, and they end up, either stretching themselves too thin in many different areas, or again, they're whatever they have is just really not scalable. That's really, I think, the biggest question. And then just again, in terms of fundraising, you have to project, and this is where, again, scientists need someone in business to help them do that, because we always underestimate. We always try to say, oh, we can do it with this. And anytime someone brings a budget to me, I always tell them to double it and double the time that you think it's going to take, because that is always by default, like how much and how long it takes, without question, without fail. Nobody is ever stuck within their preliminary, especially scientists coming to you with a budget. So, so when you're, those are the biggest things in starting a company. But.
I agree with everything.
Thank you,
I agree with everything except doubling the budget. I totally disagree with that from a CFO standpoint.
Triple it? Well, I said from the scientist's point of view, what they think they can do it in, and then they don't realize how much lawyers cost, how much consultants cost, how much insurance costs, how much regulatory costs, how much all of these other things cost. And so there you go. There comes your, they literally put, these are how much my reagents cost and my people, and that's it. And so that's why you have to double the budget.
Allan and Dominic, based on your experience, Allan, you've had clients in this space. What are the other insights you can share with us on steps in building a startup if someone has an idea?
Well, I would look, it's one step at a time. You can't do everything at once. And when just from the legal point of view, when I work with startups, the first thing I do is I develop a work plan. Because you get a lot of information thrown at you, a lot of things that people want to do, want to accomplish. And it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle with the pieces moving around. And you got to prioritize things and take things a step at a time. You also have to set identifiable goals. And when you're budgeting, you have to know that the budget is going to get you, through to the achievement of that goal, and get you to an inflection point, and then you move on to the next thing. So I think you try not to be all things to all people and do everything at once, but just move forward, get good advice. There's a lot of good advice out there, so avail yourself of it. And again, just keep on one foot in front of the other, moving forward, but not trying to be too much to too many people, because then you're going to make nobody happy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, please, Dominic.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with everything that has been said so far. I think that's absolutely right. I think to Prem's point, you have to differentiate yourself, right? So why should investor X invest in your company, and what's different about you? Is it your platform? Is it the biology on what you're targeting? Is it the management team? Is it the board? Is it the investors? So you really do need to have a strategy. You need to understand obviously what the path forward is. You need to be able to articulate that. And I think, Prem brings up a great point. You have super smart scientists. Sometimes they need help with kind of developing the IR story to get people to understand what the path forward is and why this is a good investment, and what the investment is the payout on the investment in the longer term of this. So again, this is a very capital intense business. I mean, if you Google what the average cost to develop a drug is, you've seen quotes of $700 million to $1 billion. The average time could be 7 to 10 years. So people have to believe in the overall story, but more importantly, they have to believe in the management team. I think people need to feel comfortable that they're putting their money to use with people that they have been there, they have the experience, they know what they're doing, and people that they trust. So I think that's a key aspect of the business as well. And I think, again, patents is everything. Because of the long lead time to these drugs, there is specific patents around this. And without that protection from a patent standpoint, the investment would not make sense for people. So it's important that you have your right IP lawyer around the table, and yet make sure you have the right composition of matter and method of use, whatever other patents you could avail yourself to, and make sure that's locked up and protected as much as possible. Because this business, I'll be honest, sitting from my seat, a stage, the minute you do a financing, you complete it, you celebrate for about a day, and then you start thinking about when's the next financing going to be, because you need to think about it. Because again, an average cost for a clinical study for an oncology patient could range somewhere between $75,000 to $100,000 per patient. So this is not a cheap business. It's not an immediate payoff, but this is also not a model where analysts look at DCF models and PE ratios and multiples of revenue. This is where people need to understand the science, and the big catalyst are data readouts. And you can get good data on a phase 1 or phase 2 study that could really propel the market cap because people understand the long-term potential of the story. And that's why this business is very specialist driven. There's definitely generalist investors that play in this space, but there's a lot of healthcare specific funds and investors that really drive this business and make this possible.
Thank you, Dominic, and everyone in the session. We have our in-house Center for Entrepreneurship, Idea Hub. I've had the pleasure of working with Stacey and the group for one project. They provide a phenomenal service, and healthcare is actually one of the strategic directions for Idea Hub. They're currently accepting proposals in the space of COVID-19 innovations, a total of $12,500. The proposals are due on April 1st. I'm going to ask, next question is going to be directed to Prem. It's a COVID-19 related question. I would like to know how you were able to pivot so quickly from your work with animals to pooled saliva testing last April. And also, what happens to your company after COVID goes away?
Sure, absolutely. So as a company, what we were doing was taking complex biological processes like genetic engineering, of animal models, and building a pipeline around them to streamline it, make it, this is the process, the pipeline, to make it high efficiency and lower the cost and obviously the time to deliverables. And that was for 10 years, this is what we were doing, is building that, this whole process. And so when it came to COVID and what was happening, our company located in Brooklyn was just in the hotspot, right next to the hospital. And there were no reagents available to actually run tests to determine, does someone have antibodies? Does someone have this? None of these reagents were commercially available. Someone needed to make them. So the hospital turned to us and said, we need help. And we said, absolutely, this is what we do. So we started to make even, what's called an ELISA, which you can detect, does a patient have antibodies? And the reason we did that was because they wanted to take plasma from recovered patients and give it to critically ill patients, thinking they would have antibodies that would protect the critically ill patients from disease. And so that was what we did. We started that. And from that, we learned this is a different beast here. The antibody profiles are all over the place. Only the people who are critically ill and hospitalized have high levels, but those who are mild and asymptomatic do not. And in fact, they go away very quickly. So it occurred to us that if we couldn't tell if someone had the disease, right? So this whole talk in April, May was, we're gonna have these immunity passports. And if you have antibodies, you can go back to work and do normal things. We knew early on, right then, that was not gonna happen. So we said, if you can't tell if someone had the disease, you're gonna have to know if someone has it. And this was the time when all of New York City shut down, everything. And we said, wow, there's no way this city, country, schools, anything will be able to reopen if we don't have mass testing that ensures that people don't have COVID from, the person sitting next to them doesn't have COVID. And so at that time, I think tests were hard to get. You had to show you traveled here, you needed symptoms, and it cost $150 or something in that nature. And so, we just said, this is not going to happen. We have the equipment right here in our own lab to do this. Why is it costing so much? We know how much this costs. How can these companies get away with this? So we said, we're going to do this and say, we're going to charge no more than $15 and create a test that costs no more than $15. Can we do it? So we grabbed a whole bunch of volunteers. We grabbed everyone on our staff, our scientists, and said, let's scour the world. What is available technology right here, right now, that we can implement to make this test cost this much? And so, a lot of the bottlenecks we had to remove. We had to examine what were the bottlenecks. So if you saw on TV, bottlenecks were, remember these long car lines everyone would go to drive through? Because someone highly trained had to take that long stick and poke it all the way to your brain and injure you. And, and we're like, well, if this is the case and people are gonna have to get repeated tests, compliance is gonna go way down. Nobody wants to get a nasal pharyngeal swab ever. So to have high compliance, repeated testing all the time, no way. So we had to figure out what was the best sample that people could give that was comparable. And ours, just reaching across the world, we were starting to get indications that saliva was a good sample. So now we said, okay, let's test that. Let's make sure. And Yale started to publish studies. So we're like, wait, we're on the right track. So now we went through, okay, there are a bunch of saliva kits available, but they're expensive. How do we cut the cost now? We realized you can actually put a saliva sample on the bench at ambient temperature for 6 months and you will still detect COVID, unfortunately. So there you go. You don't need anything else but a tube. That's it. You need your saliva in a tube sent to a lab. So there was another barrier we overcome in the cost barrier. And then the next thing was, okay, these tests are very expensive to perform, and the capacity and how much you can run on one piece of equipment is, there's a limitation. How can we maximize our equipment? Because equipment at that time was also hard to get. There was a wait list for equipment. So I said, well, this is the most sensitive assay, the RT-PCR method. Can we just combine samples? And if that sample of combined samples is negative, just call everybody negative. And what's the limitation of that? So we came up and said, wow, we can go really high. We can actually pool 24 samples together and not miss a positive person. So that's how we were able to scale the process, performing, 20-fold the number of tests that any other lab could perform with the same amount of equipment. So we went from being, most labs that have our equipment could maybe do 1,000 a day. We're able to do 25,000, a day and that's not even our maximum capacity. So that's how we pivoted, was just, honestly, it was a call to action. It was oh my gosh, my kids, I can't tolerate them at home. I need them to go back to school. And it was really, again, having the support of our investors too. Leo and everyone there was, I said, this is important. We can really save this country if we do this. And they said, do what you need to do. And so that's what we did. So we started this in April of last year. In June and July, there was a release from the X Prize that came up with this competition. And we just said, wow, they wrote the mission of this prize and the competition for us, because this is everything we want to do. So we went for that. And it's just been a lot of obstacles along the way that we just said, we won't fail. We will continue to go at it. So that's, sorry, long story, but that's how we pivoted.
Thank you, Prem. Please send some of your products up to Canada. There are lots of restrictions, especially for me that I travel frequently. And while here in Canada, we have to do a test before coming, doing a test at the border, 10 days later, another test. The government would check on you every day over the phone. Yesterday, in the middle of the meeting, I was called downstairs. Someone had come to our home to make sure that we are here, and we are very much looking forward to at least having the chance of doing an easier test rather than sticking that in the brain. Thank you. So there are a few questions that are left. I'm going to try to combine them. And I've received some questions from the panel members, from the audience. So I'll try to combine them all together. Let's talk about the role of IT, data analytics, and marketing, and also finance in biotech. And I would like to also get your opinion about the career advice for students who seek to pursue a career in biotech. What are the core skills? Is it important to understand the domain knowledge, the science, when we join a company? Starting with you, Dominic, please.
Yeah, so maybe I'll take those in reverse and answer your question first on the domain knowledge. I think having domain knowledge is a huge, huge plus and a benefit. To be honest with you, I kind of steered away from science in high school and college, and I wish I didn't, because I do find it more difficult to kind of catch up and keep up with the scientists in-house. So I do encourage people to pay attention in those courses. Again, there's a lot of courses you take in college because you think you're going for an accounting major and you're going to work at KPMG or another big firm, that you kind of think you're never going to use this. But in hindsight, again, I wish I paid more attention to the science courses, more attention to the IT courses, more attention to the statistics courses, because obviously those all play a key role in the biotech world and different aspects of it. And also, I think when you look at my seat as CFO, I think the role kind of the role of the CFO has changed from more of a traditional accountant CPA type to more of an outward-facing strategic partner to the CEO and to the board. So don't get me wrong, you need to understand the finances, you need to understand accounting, but it's just as important to understand the underlying business and the science to be able to communicate your story to investors and understand the overall external marketplace and the competitors in the space. So again, I think even if you're a finance major, but you're interested in getting into biotech or pharma, or the medical field, just, I encourage you to take those courses as if they're optional, mandatory, and pay attention because they will be helpful down the road. A lot of CFOs today, don't have my phenotype. A lot of CFOs have, medical degrees or PhDs that are very helpful for smaller biotech at earlier stages of development. So I think, again, you see the phenotype of the CFO has evolved. So again, I'd encourage you to take those courses as you go. And then again, whether it's IT, data analytics, marketing, there's just a lot of different entries into this business. On the IT, the IT function typically rolls up to the CFO or COO. So understanding that is critical. Obviously, in over the past year and a half, or last 12 months, let's say, because of COVID, I mean, every company had to pivot and rely on IT to work remotely. So again, that's one example. Cybersecurity is top of mind for audit committees. So understanding that's a key area, not just for biotech, but for all industries as well. Data analytics, again, whether it's analyzing patient data, looking for correlations between patients or biomarkers, or analyzing sales data, patient usage, whatever that may be, I think all that is important as well. And I also think AI is going to continue to play a big role in the biotech space as well. So understanding that as well. Marketing, again, I think is a pretty unique aspect, being fortunate to work for two biotech companies that did have commercial products. What I learned here is, it's not just one customer, right? You have the actual patient, that's your customer, but then you also have the caregiver, that's your customer as well. Then you have the doctor who's prescribing it. And then you actually have the insurance company that you have to sell to and understand why they should reimburse your product, why they should give you preferred ratings and tiering. So it's a very dynamic industry. And again, regardless how you want to get into it, I think there's a lot of different entry points. And then obviously, what I did is finance, which is the traditional finance accounting role. But again, I'd encourage people, if you're going to pursue the finance role, to try to get as much domain experience as you can along the way. So you can go in-house. I think it's helpful. And then, as I said before, there's also the investment banker side of it. There's a sell side analyst. And then there's the buy side analyst working for a VC firm, a hedge fund, or a mutual fund as well.
Thank you, Dominic. Allan and Prem, do you have anything to add to Dominic's comments?
You're on mute again, Allan. You're on mute again, Allan.
That's why you need a good IT person.
This is what happens when you have children around. Thank you. I'm going to give some more generic advice. Dom went into great detail. A couple things. One, no matter what you do, even if you want to be a scientist, take business courses, right? You should be learning those in elementary school. It's just a big gap in people's education, no matter what they do. At the end of the day, whatever we're skilled at, whatever we're passionate about, we still have to be business minded about it. So I encourage people to take business classes, no matter what they want to do, especially in biotechnology, because there's a big room for that. In biotech is the huge finance component. The other thing, again, very generic comment, is we work really, really hard. We love our jobs and we spend a lot of time in it. And it seems like we spend even more time now working at home because you don't have the boundaries you used to have, where perhaps you left the office and you went home. I mean, now office is home. So you have to do something that you're going to enjoy. And, if you need to take an internship, do some reading, whatever in biotechnology, to maybe you'll get the bug like Dominic did, right? Then you should by all means do that and test it out. But I don't care how skilled you are at it or how much you're being encouraged by friends and family to go into a particular line of work. If you aren't happy doing it, you should be doing something else, because you're not going to really be fulfilled doing something that you're not enjoying.
Very good. Thank you. Some questions from the audience. I'm going to start with Navi. Nav, you made a reference to environmental aspects of biotech. Could you expand on that? What really relevant, given to the climate crisis surrounding us? He's curious to know what role biotech plays within that realm.
Well, biotech can, yes, there are many ways we can destroy an environment, but there are many ways biotech can be used to improve environment. And I think that's where we're really harnessing a lot of the technologies today to help improve environmental problems, right? So even, certain algae or things that will clean up oil, or, different ways to produce something, animal-less meat that can be produced, in the lab. There's just so much ways we can actually take the technology we have today to prevent the problems we've created, from in our past. And so, clean energy is another, right? We can do that. So I think definitely we have to watch ourselves, because in biotech and in many things, we consume a lot. CRISPR is a perfect example of not an environment, but, we have the ability to engineer genomes now, to cut and paste, to create new life forms through it, or new things. And that is something that we have to be aware of and ethically control ourselves as well. So I think it's a great question that you pose. And it is definitely a course that we all take as we go along our journey as scientists, because with these new technologies comes great power, and you have to ask at the end of the day, are you creating something that's going to help mankind, or are we heading in the wrong direction? So thank you for asking that.
Thank you, Prem. Another question for Dominic. With the recent growth in SPACs, for the audience, SPAC stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. Can you share your decision of going public through a traditional IPO rather than merging with a SPAC?
Yeah, that's a great point. And, I think what we're seeing in the SPAC space is really unprecedented, and it's great for this biotech space overall. And, when you're a private company, you really evaluate all options, which could be, an additional round of private funding, could be a reverse merger, it could be a SPAC, or it could be a traditional IPO. We were fortunate during February. We actually did TTWs, which stands for Test the Water meetings. We had very positive feedback from the investors that we met with. In addition to that, we had a very supportive board and investor syndicate. So we felt very comfortable doing the traditional IPO, which worked out well for us. But again, I think there's a lot of successful SPACs, and I think that's definitely become more of an option for companies today. I think SPACs historically maybe we use more as a second choice historically, but there's a lot of successful companies that are using that now, and it's become more accepted as well. So for us, it was just we had various opportunities, and we just thought the traditional IPO made sense because of, as I mentioned before, good feedback from investors, strong syndicate, and a strong board that was supporting us as well.
Thank you, Dominic. A question from Lucia. She's a bioengineering student, and her question is more directed toward Prem. Would you recommend getting your master's or PhD right after undergraduate, or working first?
It depends. If you are someone who's known what you want to do your whole life since you were, could walk, then pursue it right away as quickly as you can to get, that educational journey out of the way. But if you're not sure, there's nothing wrong with entering the work field and really trying to figure out where your passion lies, because you don't want to head down a really long journey of education to find that this is not something you enjoy doing. I spent 10 years pretty much in graduate school, and it's a long journey. So make sure it is what you want to do at the end of the day. So there's nothing wrong with entering the workforce and exploring. A lot of people start working and then they realize they really enjoy something specific, and that's where you want to go and get more skills in that area. So, it really depends.
Thank you, Prem. Ariella, do we have anyone raising hand?
No, but everyone can raise their hand on Zoom if you want, and we can call on you to ask a question.
Okay, in the meantime, we have a question from KG in terms of policy and support. Is there anything new that governments can do to facilitate innovation and startups in the biotech industry? What should be the role of policymakers in supporting the industry?
Well, one thing that's happening in New York, if you see, what government's doing is supporting it with capital infrastructure. As everyone has mentioned here, Allan and Dominic mentioned, it's a capital intensive, and going from academia to a company is a big step. And there's so much equipment you need, so many, that's why they're called incubators now that are popping up everywhere, because you need shared equipment, you need shared space, you need collaboration as much as, competition next to you to push you forward. Because again, your idea is not just falling, from the sky, it comes from other ideas, preceding ideas. And so that's where government, I think, can, as they're doing in New York, really is building that infrastructure for companies to help them and nurture them with the ability to grow. Because, it is just really hard to get all the equipment you need to start a company like that right off the bat. Policies, they shape the overall market, right? Any time, how much you can get paid for a specific drug, right? That can be shaped by policy. So that is a moving target that everyone has to think about. But one of the biggest policy issues right now, with COVID, right? FDA EUAs, what should be the guidelines here? Should it be, can we use symptomatic tests on asymptomatic people is always a question. And this is where government can make policies that make or break our response to COVID. And you can see exactly as policies change, how that affects, what's happening, and where they have put investments in as well. So early on in this pandemic, a lot of the resources from the government went towards what I think was fantastic and needs to happen, right? Is that how can we have a test that we can do at home? That rapid test that takes 10 minutes, that like a pregnancy test can be done at home. We want this technology. And they put so much, money and policies focused around that. They let a lot of them flood the market, through all of their FDA EUA process. And what happened was, this technology, unfortunately, is just never going to be as sensitive as your gold standard PCR, which requires time in a laboratory, capital equipment, and all of this infrastructure. The right idea, right, that the government had, but what it's created now is a lot of these different tests that have so many different sensitivity levels, and general population doesn't understand that. And so they get a negative test and they think they're negative, which in my mind, a false negative test is far worse than no result at all. Because now you've gone over to dinner at someone's house and you've spread it and have no idea. And this is what happened in this country. As you can see, all of these outbreaks where testing was implemented, such as the White House and other places, using these tests that just didn't meet the standards. So when absolutely policy can play a huge role in this. If I were to have been, given the role of testing czar, from the beginning, I would have said, look, yes, we need to invest in these, but we need to also maximize them. What technologies do we have right here, right now available? And frankly, in all of the universities, right? Every single university has all this equipment that could be utilized. And the problem was we had this thing called CLIA certification. You had to be permitted. You had to follow in these guidelines. So no academic lab could just jump in and do testing because of that, right? That was, to me, one of the biggest policy failures that the government could have done and could have gotten us up on the, running quickly. Another thing is, okay, we invest in tanks and, ships, battleships for war. Right now, still is a time to invest in a national lab that can actually respond in such a way. This country did not have a national testing response, centralized, that said, this is how, using this technology right now accessible, we can do this while we invest in modern and more technology that will be quicker, faster, and better, right? They didn't do that, and they just handed it out to private labs and all the funding to them and let them set the market. And that was the biggest policy failure in the beginning of this pandemic. So.
Thank you, Prem. Time is 2:15. If that's okay with the panels, we'll go a few minutes over. There are a couple of questions, most of them in the same line. Amanda and Justin they have asked about the career in biotech. If you are a business student with an interest in biotech industry, but with no prior experience in the industry, how do you suggest going about mastering the kind of information needed to enter that space? Also, there's another question from Gianna. What advice would you give to your 20 years old self?
Anyone?
Anyone?
Well, what I can say in terms of, wait, I'm blank on the question, but the advice I can give to you in getting into biotech as a business student is be an intern, right? At a biotech company. Just volunteer yourself and be there. And there, you will be so surprised if, like, there are a lot of interns I have sitting next to me, and they just listen to me on my conversations, and suddenly they can talk about gene editing. They can talk about COVID testing, the sensitivity and the LOD, and what is this and what is that in a week's time. They can pick up that lingo and know what they're talking about. And that's, if you have that skill and that art to be able to just hear the language, understand it vaguely, and then repeat and make someone else believe that you know what you're talking about, you should be in biotech for sure. Absolutely. Because that's the biggest challenge is, again, taking that science and very complicated information and turning it into simple terms and definitions that someone can understand. So that is, just volunteer, be there, listen to people. And the biggest career advice I could probably give to you, to anyone in any industry whatsoever is, what I've realized in my life is everybody's a salesperson. You got to realize that you're a salesperson every single day, all the time, whether you're selling, yourself to get a job, or you're selling, a product, whether you're selling this or selling that. You have to be able to face people and speak. And you have to say, if I was listening to myself, if I was videotaped, would I want to watch myself? And if the answer is no, then you got to practice and get to the point where you like to actually watch yourself in a 2-minute video, because that is what life is all about. It's all about how do you deliver a message and people want to listen to you. So in any career and anything you're going to do, that's what you need to be really good at.
Yeah, I think
Thank you, Prem.
I was just going to add to that. I think that's well said. I think, just getting exposed to it. I mean, obviously, if you can leverage any contacts, any networks you have to get an internship at a biotech or a bank that's, covering biotechs or, a buy-side fund or something like that, push for it, be aggressive. There's, obviously leverage the connections you guys have at Hofstra. There's a lot of good connections there, and they've got, they've made tremendous strides in the area as well. And then, I guess the internet to me, I mean, I'll be honest with you, because I don't have a science background, I find myself Googling on YouTube videos. There's just an abundance of information on the science aspects of things. No matter what you want, it's out there. And to Prem's point, you can learn a lot just by listening to this thing. And honestly, I sometimes need to listen to it 2 or 3 times to absorb it. But once you've got it and you're able to communicate it, I think that does come across well when you're talking to investors and the like. So there's just a lot of information out there. So reach out, use your resources, network whenever possible, and leverage any internships if possible.
Thank you. Allan, if you have any concluding remarks?
Yeah, no, everybody said it's, so very well. So I appreciate the comments, and, I participate in these panels and I always learn a lot myself. So I enjoyed listening to Prem and listening to Dominic. I'm sure the audience will take all the advice to heart and use it in their path going forward.
Very well. Thank you. Thank you very much, Prem, Allan, and Dominic, for your time. sharing your experience and valuable insight. Healthcare and biotech is a strategic direction for Zarb and Hofstra in general. So we are going to have continued conversation, and we are very much looking forward to the opportunity to having you in person on campus in future events. And I thank everybody else. Thanks to Dean Menahan, Ariella, and everybody in organizing this great event. I hope everyone enjoyed the discussion as much as I did, and I think the time is up. Looking forward to meeting you all in the future.
Thanks, Amir.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.